Alright guys, I want to talk a little bit about Panhard bars and Watts links. I do like the Watts link. It does work good. It keeps the axle perfectly centered side to side if set up correctly. So what I've done here is I've laid out a Panhard bar. A Panhard bar does the same thing as a Watts link. It's supposed to keep the rear end centered side to side. But we have what we call a radial deflection, I believe is what it's called. So if you can imagine, this bar is 40 inches long. And if you rotate it on its pivot, it creates a radius or an arc. So that arc will actually cause the rear end to go side to side, or anything that pivots is going to have radial deflection. It's going to move. So what I've done is I've laid out a 40-inch bar, and this has 9 inches of travel. The airbag travels 9 inches. So let's say the Panhard bar is set level at ride height. So at ride height, right in the middle of your travel, it's parallel to the ground, it's level. Now that's going to move up 4.5 inches, and then it's going to go down 4.5 inches for a total of 9 inches of travel. So with 9 inches of travel, you can see that the radial deflection causes the bar to move forward 0.2539. That's just a hair over 1/4 inch. So if you have a very long bar, like 40 inches long, 9 inches of travel, it moves 1/4 inch. That's a very small amount. And that's a lot of travel. When you're driving down the road, you're not going to use all 9 inches of travel. This 9 inches of travel is going to squish the bag and the shock, and it's going to overextend the shock in the bag. It'll max the suspension out. So this would be like extreme Dukes of Hazzard driving when you're ramping and hitting railroad tracks. You're never going to fully utilize 9 inches of full travel driving down the freeway. So this is kind of a good view of radial deflection with 9 inches of travel. So now if I come over here, I've laid out what you will typically see driving down the freeway. Again, 40-inch bar, you can see the radius, radial deflection. And if you zoom in, let's cut that 9 inches in half and say we're only going to travel 4.5 inches. 4.5 inches of travel is a lot of travel. That's like a very comfortable ride, very smooth. I don't think a Corvette has 4.5 inches of travel. You know, Corvettes are, I don't know, who knows, but 4.5 inches, let's call it. That's pretty much where the suspension is going to ride most of the time as you're driving down the freeway at highway speeds or in corners at speeds. So if you zoom in, you can see that from ride height to 2.5 inches up, or 2.25 inches up, it only moves that much. I believe that's a 1/16 of an inch. I'm kind of tired right now, but that's 0.0625 would be a 1/16 of an inch if I remember correctly. So a 1/16 of an inch we're talking about in your typical ride height zone. A 1/16 of an inch is what the rear end is going to move side to side. A 1/16 of an inch. This is a very simple bar. So if you're going to, I don't want to say stress over a 1/16 of an inch or a 1/4 of an inch, and you have to have a Watts link because you're doing some serious racing, or you have such large rims and tires that you don't have any room without rubbing, then yeah, you would want to put a Watts link in it. But there's way more parts involved in a Watts link. They're super complicated to set up correctly. The Panhard bar is a much simpler setup. It's much cleaner. It has less parts involved, less parts to go wrong, less room for installation error. So in like a production mode, yeah, I would do a Panhard bar to make it easy on you guys. Because again, we're talking about a 1/16 of an inch on normal ride height, or on full travel, you're talking about a 1/4 of an inch. So again, I'm not going to stress too much on Watts links because I'm not doing any like Pikes Peak hill climbs or Gran Turismo racing or anything like that. This will do fine for me on the street, especially if I'm running a bias ply white wall. The bias ply white wall is going to flex side to side more than this Panhard assembly would. So again, that's kind of my view on Panhard bars and radial deflection, or the problems that arise with bars rotating and pulling things side to side and front to back. Alright gentlemen, it's getting late. It's like 9:44. it's time to get out of here. I hope everybody has some fun. Happy building and cruising. We'll talk to you next time.